we're here to talk about one man, one American legend.
I mean, there's a lot of American legends in this show, let's be honest. I mean,
Yeah.
you can talk about Hank all you want, but it's also hard to ignore Dale and literally every other character in that alleyway.
Boomhauer is an individual of international acclaim, quite frankly.
Of some repute. Depends on
Yes.
how you feel about him.
I probably frequently spoken of in the same way that some people would talk about folk heroes, particularly in other countries. Because I don't know any single character who's probably more fun to dub over in another language than Boomhauer.
It's true. There's so many good like foreign dubs of Boomhauer, and they all have like the best takes I've ever seen. Like
Talking the other night about him in French.
the French one's really good. I've seen the Japanese one. The Japanese one is like pretty funny. It's just like that's the character you hope to get as a voice actor. Something that just lets you be as silly as you want with your noises.
100%. And it's definitely also the voice that they bring in the guy who like doesn't get a whole lot of other jobs. Like you're a little bit too weird for like main character stuff, but
He doesn't have a good vocal range, but by God, can he make some interesting noises with his tongue?
oh god, yeah. And if you can sing, that's double plus, because if I remember correctly, he's also a surprisingly good singer.
He is, but I imagine... I mean, I'd have to look this up, but I imagine they dub him over with like an actual singer or just a recording track from an actual song.
Yeah, I imagine so.
Because that's... Oh, now again, as we've been talking about doing this, and I just looked at like a few episodes on the list, I'm like... I'm remembering way more of these episodes than I thought I saw. I'm just casually reading over names and episode descriptions. I'm like, yeah, no, I remember that one. Yep, remember that one.
Well, I think that's actually a pretty good segue, because this is probably the point where we should probably say who we are and what we're doing. Who we are is we'll do that later, right? We're
not as important as Hank. Hank is more important.
We're no Mr. Hill over here. Sorry, Mr. Hill is his father. Hank is the man of the hour.
We don't talk about Mr. Hill.
We don't talk about Mr. Hill. We probably should cover who we are, huh?
I mean, it's probably a good idea to at least get it out of the way first and foremost.
All right. I'm Leshii.
I'm Guard.
And we have come here together for the divine inspiration has struck us to watch King of the Hill.
I mean... Sometimes people say it's inspiration, sometimes people say it's a calling. It's just, we were drawn to it and we couldn't ignore the calls any longer.
Yeah, like a hapless child drawn to the swamps in a German fairy tale. We heard the siren call deep in the woods of Arlen, Texas.
We heard the siren call of many trucks and propane tanks and just a very interesting boy screaming that it's not his or that is his purse.
And he doesn't know you. Why we're doing this, I think, is a bit of a thing. You and I have both seen at least some of it, but it's been a very long time.
We've seen enough to say, like, we know enough about it that we've seen it, but not so much that we can say that we're well versed in it.
Mm-hmm. And you were saying just now that you were reading through the episodes and realizing that you remembered a fair number of them, more than you expected.
I was just kind of going to random seasons because I was looking up the list to make sure I could watch it easily. And I'm like, I started season 1. I'm like, okay, I remember some of these, the first season. So I skipped randomly to like season 9. I'm like, oh god, I recognize like at least 70% of these episodes.
See, I am in an unenviable position of like having never watched it properly. I've seen clips, but I'm not going to lie, a lot of the knowledge that I have about it is heavily influenced by YouTube Poops, which is not
absolutely.
Strictly a scholarly resource.
I mean, I feel like there's a point where YouTube Poops are just the perfect resource because it distills the best elements of a lot of things into something better. Like, no one's gonna...
Well...
No one talks about Morshu from the Zelda games because the game was good. They talk about it because he has a perfect 2-sentence structure.
Sure, but I think Boomhauer is the only character that gets out of the YouTube poop circle largely unscathed.
Well...
he was born that way, to be fair. But,
yeah, he was basically a YouTube poop before they existed. he chimes in and then generally has one word at the end that you can understand. It's just like, yeah, you know what? That is wisdom. That man knows what he's talking about.
Nobody else does, but that man, he's got it. He's got it figured out. So that plays well into one of the things that I wanted to do for this first session. For the two people listening right now, hi. I wanted to do this first episode of us talking about our expectations and what we remember, and we've been doing that pretty well so far. But I want to reiterate that we haven't seen the show in a long time, either of us.
No, it's been at least a decade since I've seen it, probably a full episode.
Yeah, and we are going to be watching them as much as we can tolerate, as in order as we can handle, starting after this session. So right now we haven't seen anything.
This is just kind of our baseline, setting the stage and figuring out how we feel about it now to set up for how we feel later.
Yes, and I hope by the end of this we can kind of look back on what we do today and measure our expectations and whether we were right or wrong or whatever. But for the most part, this is ground zero. You know shit. I don't know shit.
So you really haven't seen much, huh? Like at all?
No, I didn't give it a chance until I was in my mid-teens, and I didn't really watch it.
Right.
It ended when I was in the middle of high school, and I didn't have cable for a really long time, so I didn't really have an avenue to watch it conveniently.
That's fair.
And, and then after that, nothing really happened, and then I started watching it very idly, over my roommate's shoulder, because maybe 2 years ago.
For a lot of my experience with it, up till high school, when I would see the later episodes and then the ending, a lot of my exposure to it was through Adult Swim, of all things. I didn't really watch it through Fox, where it was initially airing.
Yeah, that's right.
I would occasionally catch an episode like it was before, like Simpsons or Family Guy or something, because I definitely watched those more when I was younger. But
and they were on an airing block together.
Oh yeah,
so a lot of people would watch Simpsons and then just stick around for King of the Hill, or were aiming for King of the Hill and would watch Simpsons first.
Because I think it used to be, when I was younger, it used to be a block of like Simpsons, King of the Hill, and then Family Guy at a certain point. And it was
I think so.
So I would either catch like the later half of a King of the Hill episode waiting for Family Guy, or I would see a full King of the Hill episode after watching Simpsons, which isn't the worst place to be paid. Like, it's not the worst place to have your show placed, but
it's not the same vibe as those are.
Absolutely not. That's why I was always confused when I was watching it. Like, these are comedies, but in a completely different way.
They're not comparable. Then again, back then, adults had 4 cartoons. We listed 3 of them. I think the 4th is Beavis and Butthead.
Well, they also, I was say, if you were talking about 4 cartoons, I thought we were talking about like the Flintstones and the Jetsons. I'm like, yeah, we had 4 cartoons, and like all of them were the same formula, the exact same way.
I do mean adult cartoons.
Yeah, I was gonna say that makes more sense now.
I don't think a lot of adults were eager to tune into Flintstones and the Jetsons as they were airing.
It's funny you bring up Beavis and Butthead, because that is made by the same person.
Yeah, this was being pitched as he was working on Beavis and Butthead, apparently.
And it's funny because do you know much about Beavis and Butthead? I'm sure you've seen more of it too.
Not enough. I've seen very little.
Oh well. Either way, there's a character that's an old man.
Watch the movie.
That's a good one to watch.
Yeah.
Do you know the old man character? I forget his name off the top of my head, but there's an old man like neighbor of theirs, and he has the literal same voice as Hank Hill, like pitch perfect Hank Hill. So I wouldn't be shocked if that was like the prototype of what Hank Hill would become. Because
I wouldn't be surprised either.
He's got that same kind of attitude, and like I said, it's when you're not listening to it and you just kind of hear the character in the background, you're like, why is Hank Hill just suddenly showing up in the show?
Yeah. Okay, so like Mike Judge, yeah.
Yes, yeah, Mike Judge.
One of the co-creators, he himself, former Simpson writer, as it turns out.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he a former Simpson writer, made a whole lot of shit.
Oh yeah, he's been making stuff he's made live action stuff, he's made movies, he made obviously cartoons.
Yeah, he started with Beavis and Butthead. He did The Good Family.
I forgot about that one. Yeah.
He did Office Space and Idiocracy.
Yeah, I knew those two. Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't he make a horror movie? Was he the one that made Tusk? Was that him?
No,
that wasn't
that's
him.
Hockey
Someone.
jersey stoner.
Oh, you're right, Kevin Smith.
Kevin Smith.
I'm
Thank you.
sorry, Mike Judge. I should not have confused you with Kevin Smith. That was my fault.
The face on Mike Judge's Wikipedia entry picture just got really sour for a second, but I think he's going to forgive you.
What are you just editing his photo in real time just so you can make the joke?
Don't worry about it.
Don't look at me.
So fun fact, he was born in Ecuador.
That's interesting.
Yeah, he does not seem even remotely.
Well, I'm assuming it was is it like I don't know if you know this, but is it maybe it was like a U.S. military type thing, like stationed at a military base, born there, or maybe he's just Ecuadorian, or however you want to say it.
Oh, actually, this is very interesting. His mother is a librarian. His father, an archaeologist.
Okay.
Yeah, working for a nonprofit organization in Ecuador.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Shortly after being born, I brought him up initially because I wanted to say that he was raised in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Okay.
Early in life, which is very much, while not Texas strictly, is very much the same sort of.
I was gonna say
space.
Mike Judge definitely has that New Mexico vibe.
Yeah, a little bit. But there are parts of New Mexico that feel very much like Arlen, Texas, at least in the suburban areas.
I've only been on the outskirts, but yeah, I can probably agree on that a little bit.
I've only been privy enough to drive through most of it for the most part, but there are definitely spots where I could pretty easily see a slightly different version of Hank, Bill, Boomhauer, and Dale, sipping a cold one behind the fence.
Their player 2 pallet swaps just hanging out in the alleyway.
Yeah, exactly. But he definitely has at least some background of appropriate interest in the setting, right?
Yeah.
Whereas Greg Daniels, the other co-creator, grew up in New York State.
Oh.
And went to Harvard.
Okay.
And that is probably the farthest person I can imagine from Hank Hill.
I mean, that's that at that point you're just setting up the con character or the con writer in the background. Yeah. Like every time that there's an overly educated just asshole on the show, you know where that's coming from.
Yeah, yep. But he met Lorne Michaels in late 1987 and worked on Saturday Night Live for a little bit, apparently.
Did he? That's interesting.
And that's how he got involved with The Simpsons due to relational connections.
Yeah, rubbing elbows with other creatives, I guess, kind of tends to cascade downwards.
Oh yeah, you have no idea how greasy and cascadent those elbows are.
Well, it's like you look at the amount of writers that have been on like The Simpsons and other shows like that. It's like Conan O'Brien was a Simpsons writer and all that kind of stuff.
Was he?
Yeah. He was he was an early seasons writer. But even if you go back to like some of the old Cartoon Network shows like Dexter's Lab and back, you'll find names like Seth MacFarlane was a writer for Johnny Bravo. And it's like,
that's right, yeah.
You find crazy names like that. Like, yeah, everyone gets their kind of start somewhere. Everyone starts rubbing elbows with people somewhere.
Very incestuous industry there. Not that that's a strange thing to anyone that kind of knows how things are now.
Not that that's a strange thing to Arlen, Texas.
Yeah, exactly. I think we got off track a little bit.
Disclaimer, I don't know if there's any episodes about that. Disclaimer.
Disclaimer, we don't know. We're going to find out. But yes, so like he has some background in an Arlen, Texas-esque setting, right?
Yeah.
Because I not knowing much about the show and not knowing much about the people who made it until right now, looking at the Wikipedia, fully expected it to be two California animators writing a story about Hicks.
I can't believe you didn't look up all this beforehand and have a bunch of notes on hand. I can't believe you're just doing this off the cuff.
Look, there are certain expectations, right? There are certain standards that have been set by their forebears.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. But, having... I should probably mention also, the part of the reason I'm concerned with this is because I grew up in Texas, right? When I was very, very young.
The farthest east I have been is Illinois, baby.
Woo!
I have not gone that far south or that far east.
I grew up in Texas, not far from the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Arlen is suspected to be not far from Houston, which is very far south in Texas.
Yeah, that sounds about right. They make fun of Houston all the time, too.
Yeah, Houston would be like the big city compared to their little suburb. And it's not far from Galveston, and it's not far from the Gulf of Mexico. So that's if they ever have a beach episode, it's probably at the Gulf. When they have the beach filler arc for their anime.
No one ever wants the beach filler arc.
Exactly. I don't want to see Hank playing volleyball. I bet he does.
Well, I mean, I do. I don't know about you, but I do.
I want to see Bobby playing volleyball. But
just get a ball spiked right into his nose.
Yeah, he would. But I grew up in Texas. I didn't live in a place like Arlen, but I had to do grocery shopping in a place like Arlen. From a casual observer's perspective, of course, y'all already know that I've barely watched the show. But I've seen my fair share of characters a lot like this, and I'm kind of expecting to get kind of sent back in nostalgia as I watch this.
Yeah, that's what I've heard from people who have lived in more Arlen and like rural Texas type areas when they've seen the show, is like they can identify someone they know who relates to literally almost every major character in the show. Like one for one, like they know that person somewhere.
They're everywhere, man.
Well, and even for like people who don't know that sort of like rural experience, I think the characters, from what I remember, are super well written enough that you can identify universal traits among like most of the cast that you can relate to pretty much every, like, I wouldn't say there's any one character that's necessarily bad. Like, you can relate to pretty much everything someone goes through in this show. And it's really well written in that way.
But we have variable degrees of information, but neither of us have watched it, like, fully, right? Definitely not from the start.
I know I've seen the finale. That much I know. I know I have seen the finale episode of the show. I think I might have watched it live, but...
Maybe. That was 2010, so if you found yourself bored in, like, mid-high school...
Well, it's one of those things of, like, I used to think when I was younger that King of the Hill... Well, when you don't have the perspective of it, is like... Well, why would I watch this when I can watch Family Guy or The Simpsons? It's like, I need to see the crude jokes that make me laugh. I don't want to see a middle-aged man in Texas solving real family issues.
See, that's exactly why I didn't watch it, too. Because when I first got exposed to King of the Hill, it was... it came out in 1997, and I saw it fairly early on when I was young enough to know that animation should be colorful and funny.
Exactly.
Because I was a child. And King of the Hill was probably the closest thing to a boring adult show, so I never watched it.
It's like,
granted,
when you watch it when you're younger, it's like, well, why are these characters just talking? Where's the funny?
Like, okay, so like my dad's favorite shows at the time were This Old House, like Emerald Live, and
God.
King of the Hill. And 2 out of 3 of those are entertaining to me now as an adult, but very dry.
King of the Hill is especially just a dry show. It's funny, but my God, is it dry.
You have to have at least a little bit of life experience to kind of get it. A lot of kids may laugh at the sillier things, but there are a lot of cuts in there that are definitely pointed at a certain demographic of person that is above the age of probably 24.
And it's not that they don't have jokes or anything. It's not that it's not trying to be funny. It's just that the humor comes from a lot of the mundane situations and then what comes out of them, and it's
Yes.
something you don't really appreciate until you're like, you know what, life is kind of shit, but sometimes something funny comes out of it.
And a lot of it is also making do with the strange characters that you find in life that until you get more experienced, you may be kind of uncomfortable dealing with. But everybody's a person. Everybody's a little bit weird. And you can't pick your neighbors, but you can pick whether you're fond of them.
Yeah.
Right?
Some people just kind of enter your life whether you like it or not, and you don't have to like them, but by God, you do have to live with them one way or another.
Like, nobody picked Bill.
Well,
Well, they did. Actually, that's the whole point, is they did pick Bill.
Yeah,
he was
that's-
there. They could have said no, and they didn't.
that's another one of those things of like, I was looking at the list, I was like, oh yeah, there's a Bill-centric episode that's actually really, really sad that I remember now. I'm like, oh God, that's right. Bill is just the heartache of the show, and it hurts every time there's an episode about him. I forgot.
Yeah.
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 Oh my God. Again, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but it's just that I looked over at the list because it was on my other screen real quick, and one of the episodes is in season 3, and the description just starts with Bill becomes suicidal when the Christmas holiday reminds him of a breakup. I'm like,
Jesus Christ.
I see. That's the type of character I want to see.
That's right. We're doing one of those shows, aren't we?
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of expectations of characters that I fully expect to get shattered, just out of casual not awareness yet.
Like who? Well, do you have an example?
So, for the baseline, we have Hank, right? He's
Right.
A very typical middle class Texas proud parent. He is on the conservative side, but not completely ignorant. He's rarely overtly malicious, but he's often very stubborn and reactive.
Yeah.
I think he is very willing to get revenge, but is very unwilling to be obstructive out of nowhere.
That's kind of accurate from what I remember. I remember him being. He's definitely the everyman, and in a lot of ways, he's really not flat. He's got a lot of depth to him, but it's more so. I remember him being a good person with really dated sort of views on like morality and like being an adult.
He's rarely ill-intentioned, but he is frequently behind the times, maybe a little backwards. And I want to say reactionary explicitly because that seems to be kind of the crux of his conflicts with Bobby a lot of the time.
Yeah, a lot of the conflicts tend to be Bobby doing thing he doesn't recognize, for Hank angry.
And at the end of the episode, either things return to status quo or Hank realizes that Bobby isn't hurting anyone.
Or he realizes, hey, my son needs to grow on his own.
Yeah, there's a lot of that, I bet. In stark contrast, as a lot of writing tends to do, I think Peggy is a little bit the opposite. Not strictly so. She's well-intentioned, but she is very proactive in causing trouble, and I don't think she really cares how people view that, which is fine.
The one thing I distinctly remember about Peggy is she is just the most raging narcissist I've ever seen in fiction. She is
gonna make people mad.
So bad. That's fine. They can yell at me all they want. Peggy is an absolute narcissist.
She, like, from my memory, is prone to being very spiteful, often when it is undeserved.
Oh yeah.
Especially when rivalry gets a little bit too far. I think she takes the way that other people view her a little bit too seriously. Granted, as do almost all of her friends and peers.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say that there's any one character that's an absolute saint on this show. Every character has their baggage and shit they've done.
Yes.
But it's like, you know, some characters definitely lean towards the going to hell meter a little bit more. And
yeah.
I'm not saying Peggy's necessarily there. All I'm saying is she technically kidnapped a girl that spoke Spanish because she thought she was in her Spanish class.
Oh.
That is an episode.
Yeah?
That's an episode I distinctly remember. She thought her Spanish was so good that she understood that a girl was like asking her where her parents were. She just put her on the bus and took her back to America or something like that.
Oh, no. That's a very King of the Hill episode if I've ever heard one. Well, I guess we'll see it eventually.
I probably have the details wrong on that, but when I think of Peggy, that's like the one episode I always think of like, yeah, that's Peggy.
I remember Spaghetti and Meatballs.
I was gonna bring that one up too, because that's like a much.
I don't remember.
Yeah,
I don't remember how that came up, other than her, I think, trying to one up someone else.
I don't remember if it was one upping or if she just genuinely thinks she made something unique, and it's just fucking spaghetti and meatballs.
You know, when that episode comes up, we're gonna have to like make spaghetti and meatballs ourselves.
Yeah.
I don't eat meat. That's going to be a challenge.
I mean, yeah. The thing you're going to make your partner eat it. Like, does this taste like Peggy to you?
Does this taste Peggy to you?
I need you to describe on a scale of 1 to Peggy how Peggy does this taste.
I need you to measure the pegosity of my spag.
My spag.
My spag and meatballs.
Oh, God.
Rounding out the house, we also have Bobby.
A lot of people I know kind of think like don't like Bobby because he's just kind of mostly because they think he's like in the annoying way. Not that he's not like good. They just think he's like really obnoxious.
Well, they're wrong.
I mean, they're wrong, but also I totally see where it comes from, because there is a point, especially early episodes, Bobby does not have the same sort of like flair he does later on. Early on, he kind of has Hank's personality, but his eccentric interests instead.
I mean, we all know why that is, but also I imagine they kind of expected him to be less of a leading role early on.
Yeah, that's definitely what it feels like.
I mean, maybe in the early stages they weren't entirely sure how deep they wanted to go into the like, here's how you raise your child properly kind of storylines. Which
is interesting because, again, from what I remember, that kind of becomes like a huge like theme throughout the entire show at some point.
Oh, yeah.
Because, I mean, besides the fact that it's just obviously Bobby and Hank, like, Hank's relationship with his own family becomes a huge focus through a lot of episodes from what I recall.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just
their strained relationship with Diane and all of Bobby's friends.
Yeah.
It's like parenting becomes a very important part. I don't know how quickly that sets in, because I know it's an undercurrent to most of the things that Hank does, but I don't know at what point it becomes a major. I hesitate to say plot point with a story that, as far as I know, doesn't have a whole lot of meaningful continuity. I think it does, but not episode to episode.
It's like a theme. It's a running theme through the whole show where it keeps coming back up even in smaller, meaningful ways.
Yeah, and the whole point of the show is to show comedy and mixed stories with very like blue collar people, right? Very middle class, average people, and almost everyone in that, for lack of a better term, tax bracket. Is a parent in some way, either a direct parent or someone who works with kids or that sort of thing. It's going to be a part of their lives that's worth telling, and a lot of that is comedy. As someone who has been something of a parent myself, I'll have you know. It's like there's a lot of comedy there. Not a lot of it's worth telling, but there's a lot that people should know about.
It's all in the way that you tell the story, because anything that's mundane can be made funny depending on the way that it's told. That's just how comedy works. You can make the smallest thing funny if you just give it a nice like wrist flare and like, oh, suddenly it's a joke.
Yeah, and it's very easy to do because kids are dumb as fucking rocks.
Yeah.
And they will do so many things without thinking, and I think that actually plays into a lot of what Bobby does, of acting without thinking very hard and then having to deal with the fact that he has to think twice as hard to make up for what he's done.
Not to spoil another episode, I just looked at the list again. There's one This is specifically in
Yeah.
some episode. It's called "The Wedding of Bobby Hill," and the description doesn't sound like anything related to the title. Angry that Luann cost him his job at house sitting Boomhauer's house. Okay, hold on. That's enough, right? Here's what Here's the response to what Bobby does. Bobby replaces her birth control pills with candy.
Oh my God, he would.
And it's
he would.
It's like that's one of those moments of like, yeah, no, there's not any malicious thought or understanding of what the implication is, like what that will do. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, that's not anything super crazy, but it's still fucking funny.
Yeah. He at the start of the series, he is 11, and towards the end of the series, he is 13, and that is very much the kind of thing that an 11 to 13-year-old would do.
Yeah.
Happens all the time. And that's why it's an episode, because kids do stupid shit like that, and it's way funnier to talk about it on a show that isn't real than having to confront it the first time with real children.
I think that's the thing I'm gonna take away from this more is that I think I'm going to like Bobby more as a character now than I did when I was younger. Because when I was younger, I didn't want to see a character like me doing stupid shit that I would already be doing. I wanted to see the crazy wackiness. I didn't want to see a realistic depiction of a teenager doing stupid things and getting in trouble.
You know what? I think you have a really good point there, because that is something that I think pushed me off of it as well. It's like, I don't want to see a show where I am represented on screen so directly and without flair, right?
Well, at least in a way where it's like, at a certain point in your life, you don't want to see that reflection. Like, I can see a reflection of myself now and not give a shit. Like, I do that kind of thing. Yeah, I experience that kind of thing. When I was 11 to 13, I wanted to see someone on screen who was 11 to 13 and kicking ass, and Bobby is probably the last person to ever be described as kick-ass. He's the one getting his ass kicked, usually.
Except in very rare occasions, like when someone is trying to take his purse.
True. I'm realizing now, like, thinking back on the show already, it's like, there are a lot of characters to keep track of, and not just like how some shows have like The Simpsons has a huge cast of characters, but they don't all get like almost equal screen time or importance. Whereas with King of the Hill, there are side characters that don't always pop up, but they have importance to the overall show. Like there's so few moments where there are bit characters that only show up and never come back. There's obviously one-off characters for certain episode stories, but they're always paired up with a character that is going to take that experience forward. And
I think by its nature of not being a gag comedy, it's definitely a comedy show, but it's not like Simpsons and like Family Guy, where a lot of the jokes lead up to a gag. Family Guy more so than The Simpsons, for sure.
Yeah.
But King of the Hill is situational comedy rather than like sketch in a weird way. And to that end, a lot of their episodes can afford to have B plots that are actually meaningful and affect a lot of people other than just the main characters.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like you have those important stories of like Hank or Bobby or Peggy doing something, but then in the same episode you'll have something about like Dale doing something on the side, something seemingly inconsequential but still funny and interesting to what's going on in the whole story.
And it wraps together by the end almost inevitably, but without those background characters having their consistent lives that continue off screen, you can't have those B plots or C plots sometimes. And that builds to this whole feeling that the place is lived in and alive and worth keeping track of. Like, who gives a shit what Quagmire's up to?
Well, not even the writers do, because when they got bought out by Disney, there was I wouldn't say it was a mandate. There's obviously no real way of telling that it was being told from the higher-ups, but there was a very distinct difference in the way that the character was written after the Disney buyout. Yeah. And it was real apparent what happened.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. But versus that with they have short if I'm remembering correctly, they have short sections of stories for even like Hank's boss that Hank is not related to at all.
Yeah, no, they have like that's what I was saying. Like, there's a lot of side characters in King of the Hill, but all of them still have importance. They don't just kind of, they don't just show up. There are recurring storylines that happen throughout multiple episodes where just in the background a character will, yeah, no, I'm still recovering from the situation that happened 4 or 5 episodes ago,
or even more than a season ago. In some cases, I think a lot of that plays into the general continuity of things. Like, everyone knows that things kind of end up at the status quo back at the Hill household.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, but that doesn't mean that the things around them haven't changed or that the meaningful change hasn't occurred to the town, and all of that plays into future, funnies and whatever later on. But it's why it's not strictly 100% a show that you can just watch out of order. You can if you want to, but if you watch it in order, I'm expecting to get some reward out of it in just like being able to keep up with all the weird little things going on.
Well, the thing is, like, I remember a lot of plot lines where, like, characters will be pulled out of the show, or they'll be introduced to the show and continue to show up in the show. And it's like, if you just watch a random season 1 episode, then watch a random, like, season 9 episode, there will be so much change that persists throughout the seasons where it's like, you've missed a whole crucial plot line that you don't understand the implication of it as.
Yeah.
And
it's every bit as important to the whole thing as whatever the Hills are up to.
And I think that's really impressive from like an outsider perspective of the series, of remembering that they allow these characters and the world to change. And I hope that I keep that perception, and I hope that it's true, because I remember it being the case where the world just, like, the writers weren't afraid to change the status quo whenever they felt like it was appropriate. And while things, like you said, do return to the household as they used to be, there's still enough that changes that opens up new storytelling, entirely new storytelling potential and entirely new characters to bounce off one another.
Yeah.
And I think that's just really important to see.
I think it is too. And I think that's something that a lot of longer running shows have a privilege of doing, right? Because things, especially nowadays when shows get shit canned super quickly.
A lot of these things aren't really given the room to breathe and set in until maybe like season 3, right? I don't expect to see a whole lot of continuity persistence through season 1 and 2, but King of the Hill has 13 seasons. And once you're past, like, season 4, I imagine there's a certain comfort to your armchair and saying, like, yeah, we'll have enough time to let this, like, background thing slow burn over time. Yeah.
Or have a small catalog of characters to whip out for any particular scene. Like, oh, we want this character to suffer this sort of situation. Who do we have that suits that? Oh, well, there's a guy who went to jail in season 3. You want to pull him out again in season 7? He did his time.
Yeah, sure, why not? I'll see how the characters remember that character and how they'll react to him now.
Yeah, yeah. Do I know you?
Hank is one of those characters that, like, either you can immediately pull off an impression of it, or you cannot. Same with Bobby. You can either do the voice or you can't.
Okay, Dad.
Exactly.
You gotta start with your... fuck.
To do Bobby, you have to have the voice of an 80-year-old on a 10-year-old body.
Yeah, you gotta have you gotta have the voice and mentality of an 80-year-old in a body that never reached puberty.
Like Bobby sounds like his vocal cords, like, aged 80 years by the time he was born.
Well, Dad, I want to get into hip hop. It's not even close. Not even fucking close.
You tried. That's all that matters.
Yeah. Right. Where were we?
We were just talking about the types of characters and stuff that we were, like, expecting to see and what we expected of them.
Oh yeah, we were also talking about the Hill household and who we're expecting to see there.
Yeah. Any other characters you're keen to see more of or expecting to change your view of?
I think the one I'm least familiar with out of the quote unquote big four, for lack of a better term, is Luann, who I think I mistakenly just called Diane earlier.
I think you did, and I just completely ignored it because I didn't recognize. I didn't really it didn't register.
Who's that? I don't know much about Luann. I know she's got a really bad situation with her mom.
Yeah.
I don't remember who her mom is related to.
I think she's related to Peggy.
Like Peggy's sister.
I think so. I think that's the relationship.
Yeah, she's niece to one of them. I guess all of them through marriage. Whatever. She's got a bad relationship with her mom, who I believe is in jail.
I believe so. Yeah, I think she comes back in one or two episodes, but I don't remember that much.
Oh, I'm sure we'll find out. And I know that she is an airheaded ditz, who isn't very smart and never really gets to be.
My one memory of Luann is the manger babies. I don't know if you even know what that is.
I don't.
Okay, that's don't worry, you will.
The only major thoughts I have about Luann, probably because she doesn't show up in a whole lot of YouTube poops.
Well, she's definitely one of those characters that's hard to kind of make a joke out of because she already kind of is the joke.
Yeah, and it's a tame joke most of the time too.
Yeah, it's never. I can't think of any instances where the show is needlessly mean to Luann. I can think of it for some other characters, but never Luann.
So, a few days ago, my partner was watching a random episode out of, I think, season 7, and I caught a few glimpses of certain scenes as I was about my business, and I remember that it was about Luann, and it was about a very unique man who was taking advantage of her naivety. Specifically by saying "Oh, honey, you're not stupid, you're ignorant, and that's a good thing." And it turns into quite possibly the climax of the episode is a moment which reminded me that adult shows can't get away with certain things.
Yeah, you forget
any of the
that
shows I couldn't watch.
They can write situations that have impact.
I'll say it this way: a character gets written out of the show in a way that I am astonished they got away with on Fox. Maybe they were on Adult Swim by this time. I don't know. Regardless, it was crazy. So keep your eye out for the pig episode in season 7.
Oh, I think I know which one you mean now.
You might do. I'm not going to go any further than that.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, you bring that up, and it's they do some pretty dark shit on King of the Hill, from what I remember. I remember.
Yeah, I didn't remember that was the case. But I guess they do.
In King of the Hill, they kill a lot of characters in this show.
Yeah,
and it's just this is again when I was saying it's one of those shows that is not afraid to change things. Goddamn, they're not afraid to fucking just write out a character completely because it's their time to go out.
You know what, and God bless them. It's the land of opportunity, the land of free speech, America, 1997, baby. Dale Gribble would be proud.
King of the Hill. I think for me, the one character I'm kind of interested in seeing more of is Dale again. Yes. Because obviously not the big four, but just in terms of overall all the characters, I think Dale has the potential for me to either be a really funny side character that I like seeing, or a character that's going to become one note really quick in that he's just the crazy, conspiracy nut neighbor. And it's okay, that he's going to show up, right? He's going to say some wacky, crazy shit, and then he's going to go on his crazy adventure. And it's I'm afraid of that becoming too obnoxious, and I'm not going to like the character anymore. But I hope not.
I have some fears about that early on, but I know they round him out towards the end. He never stops being crazy, but they give him more features. And I think his weird relationship with his kid and John Redcorn puts a lot of humanity into his situation. And in the background story that covers his marriage, which we'll get into in more detail later, he has a lot of facets to him that just don't get brought up in conversation a lot because they're not as funny as the pro-gun, anti-government pest, a pest control guy who's into every single conspiracy you've ever heard of.
And ones you haven't, because he's probably made them up.
Mm-hmm. But he's confident they're real, but he's also aware enough to probably look a flat earther in the eyes and tell them they're stupid.
Yeah.
It can't be a flat earth because it's already hollow, idiot.
Exactly. Exactly.
Where are they going to put the lizard man if the earth's flat?
Are you sure you didn't write for the show?
Actually, this is a really roundabout way of me telling you. Are you Mr. Judge? Showrunners. Jim Dawtrive. Executive producer Jim Dawtrive.
Wow, you really pulled that out so naturally. I can almost believe you didn't read it from a Wikipedia page.
I had a 10-year career as an advertising copywriter in Philadelphia. I joined King of the Hill as a writer at its inception in 1996. I was also an executive producer. I can't keep this up.
That was a good bit. I almost believed for a second you weren't an AI speaking to me.
I can't continue like this. One of the characters that I'm eager to see more about, I think, is Cotton Hill, which is probably a controversial option.
I mean,
if there are any characters that are closer to just bad people than not, I think Cotton is one of them.
I think he's one of those characters that's extremely complex in an almost difficult way to discern. Because there are episodes that I know that I do like of him, and I do think he's a good character. I just think he's a fucking asshole.
And I think a part of his story mimics a lot of the ones that we hear about various war veterans. In the understanding that trauma aside, everyone ends up with trauma after war. Shit sucks. It ruins everything for everyone.
Oh, right? Absolutely.
But I think part of the quote-unquote story for Cotton, to my memory, is having to deal with the fact that, like, having suffered does not give you permission to make other people suffer, and he never really learns that lesson.
Yeah, from what I remember, I think that's one of the stories that kind of gets neglected in the overall show, from what I remember. I don't fully remember exactly, but there's a memory in the back of my head of, like, thinking, man, Cotton didn't get what he deserved, necessarily. Not that he deserved to be, like, I don't know, fucking killed for what he did, or the things he says, or anything like that, but not enough people would chastise him or put him in his place.
Yeah, but at the same time, I don't know that a story about him would be worth a lot in the scope of things. I don't know that a show about him would be all that good, and in that case, like, it's not about him as much as the things he does affecting other people. It's a sad time, but I think there are better, more meaningful stories about that archetype of person, that archetype of character, than King of the Hill could handle.
Yeah, because there's a point where it's like you still have to be funny about it. You still have to make a comedic joke and, like, story that's not too heavy, but it's a moment of, like, you still want to see the character face repercussions for the things he does and says.
And I think it affects a lot of people in real life, where you get so old that the people around you give up.
Yeah.
Everyone knows Meemaw says some awful shit at Thanksgiving dinner, but nobody's gonna stand up and correct her. We don't know how many years she's got left, right?
We just let her say the shit she says, so she doesn't feel too sad.
Look, it's either Meemaw says awful shit during Thanksgiving dinner, or Meemaw says awful shit during Thanksgiving dinner, and there's an argument, and I'm gonna take the one that allows me to eat my dinner in quieter peace.
Gonna have the one where it doesn't turn into a shouting match and then everyone's sad.
Yeah, which I think is a situation that comes up with Cotton Hill in some episodes, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm reading Wikipedia very idly and realizing he's a World War II veteran. I didn't remember correctly. I thought he was a Vietnam vet.
No, he was World War II. He's old. He's real old.
And I forgot that he lost
is,
his shins.
Yeah, specifically his shins, yes.
Specifically his shins.
They reattached his feet to his knees.
I forgot that whole part. Oh my god.
I think the funniest part about it is when you see Cotton and Bobby next to each other, it's like, yeah, no, this is just Bobby in like 50 years.
Yeah. You can only hope that he gets Hank's height, but we don't really know that for sure.
I mean, Cotton wasn't that height when he was born. I mean, he wasn't that. He had a sudden.
He had knees then. Sorry, he had shins then.
What's the opposite of a growth spurt? A growth shrink?
Well, it's not a growth shrink. It's a shrink spurt.
He suffered a sudden and rapid height loss.
Yeah, there you go. That's the sensitive way to say it.
It's like that's not Cotton's real height. It's not like Hank lucked out and didn't become a dwarf. Wasn't like a dwarf.
Hank lucked out in not going to Vietnam and losing his shins to machine gun fire.
Exactly.
Oh my god.
It's hereditary, you know.
Being, magnetic to machine gun fire, specifically in the shins.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Oh, that's right.
What'd you find now?
That's right. January 31st, 2023, Hulu ordered a revival of King of the Hill.
Yeah, I was kind of curious about that. Because I think it's a continuation, not like a reboot.
Yeah,
but at the same time, I'm concerned because I think the voice actor for Dale just pass away recently?
He did, but I'm reading here on May 1st, 2023, one of the writers had stated that the new revival will have a time jump taking place years after the series finale, where Bobby is quote unquote older. But Hardwick, Dale's voice actor, was confirmed to reprise his role. And only managed to record a couple of episodes prior to his death. Rest in peace.
Damn, it's a shame.
Yeah, so part of me was thinking like, Dale is probably old as shit, probably won't be reprising his role. Sure did. Guess not anymore.
I mean, they'll probably do like something tribute-wise for him, I would imagine.
Oh, absolutely. There's no way they won't. Dale is maybe the third most popular character in the entire series.
I would say he's definitely one of the most popular. I don't know how high or how wide-reaching it would be, but I mean, there's so many different memes that come from Dale alone in this show that it's like it's hard to say that like of anything in this show, Dale probably is one of the farthest reaching in terms of pop culture.
And with his actually meaningful background. B stories that go on with him. If any character in King of the Hill was going to have a solo spin-off, it would probably be Dale. I'm glad they didn't.
Yeah.
But if anyone was going to, it was going to be Dale.
I mean, you don't want to see the fully syndicated Boomhauer show?
If it was about his time as a Texas Ranger...
I forgot about that. Shit,
yeah,
you're right.
That is like one of three things I remember of Boomhauer's, that he's a secret Texas Ranger.
I totally forgot about that detail.
He is up there with Chuck Norris.
He sure is.
Yeah. But give me a Bill episode and it's just 8 uninterrupted hours of him sitting around in his like home alone.
His home crying, eating ice cream, if he has any.
Episode 1 is 22 minutes long. All of it is taken from the perspective of a security camera inside of his home. For 5 minutes straight, he sits on the couch and eats ice cream. For 3 minutes, he tries to play solitaire alone, but can't get the cards to line up quite right, so he gives up. And then there's, at the end, roughly 4 or 5 minutes where he is just not in the house because he's out in the alley having drinks with the boys.
You want to know how like poisoned my brain is? You said security cam footage, and I'm just like, oh, so it's going to be 5 Nights at Freddy's with Bill. Great.
Five Nights at Freddy's, but instead of scaring you, he just shows up at your doorstep like, can I have a towel?
Hey, you in there? Can I just hang out? Can I just say hi? I just need the company.
Kind of lonely here at night, huh? Don't mind a bit of company.
Oh God.
My Dale impression is dangerously close to my Forrest Gump impression, and that's not good.
You mean Bill?
Bill. Fuck, dude.
There's too many characters. How do we
Too
keep
many
up with
characters that end with the letter L. Dale doesn't even end with L. God
Sure
damn
doesn't.
it.
I was just letting you have that one.
Fuck.
I wasn't saying anything. I was just letting you have that
The
one.
phonetic L. Bill, Dale,
Bill.
Bell, Bobby Hill,
Bobby Hill.
Hank Hill.
many
Oh
hills.
yeah. They have Ladybird the dog.
It's true. The best character in the show.
Does Ladybird do much?
They exist, and I'm happy she exists because she's a good girl.
Yeah.
I mean, you know.
So
She-
I want to point out that, like, specifically in regards to like Fox syndicated adult cartoon shows, we have this kind of unholy trifecta of cartoon dogs here, because we have obviously Brian Griffin.
Right.
We have The Simpsons, Santa's Little Helper, and we have Ladybird.
Yeah.
This is a very confusing, like, trigram graph of, like, cartoon dog options here.
I mean, I think it's more of a slider, because on one end, on the far left of just like normal dog, you have Ladybird. On the far right of like complete cartoon, you have Brian. And in the middle, you have a little bit of Santa's Little Helper. So it's just like a slider of what kind of cartoon dog do you want?
Well, see, I imagine it as a triangle because you can probably put certain other cartoon dogs on different axes.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Because, like, for, Snoopy, for instance, right?
Yeah, because I would put Snoopy between like Ladybird and Santa's Little Helper. And then I would... Yeah.
I would put him, like, right there with just a tiny smidge towards Brian Griffin because of the sass. But he is very far from Brian Griffin as, like, a character.
Okay, so if our triangle is Ladybird, Santa's Little Helper, and Brian Griffin, is Scooby-Doo like dead center in the middle of like all three of them? Because
Yes.
it's like he acts like a dog but is more cartoonish but isn't fully like cartoon like Brian, but still has the sass.
You know what? No, I think in the way that, like, Snoopy is in the middle of two with a little bit of one, I think Scooby-Doo is between Brian and Santa's Little Helper with a tiny touch of Ladybird.
Okay.
Because he's dog-ish, but most of his points aren't about being a dog, but also he can talk and be sassy and is subject to cartoon antics like Santa's Little Helper.
And he can eat a whole sandwich like a deck of cards and stack them together, and
it sounds just like cards ruffling at the poker table. Who's the other axis? Who's between Ladybird and Brian Griffin with a little bit of Santa's Little Helper?
Shit,
That would be a very jaded cartoon dog that isn't very cartoonish.
I'm trying to.
But it's very adult.
Would that point be like I haven't seen BoJack? Isn't there like a dog character in BoJack?
No, he's very upbeat.
Okay.
He's also like if like he's just Californian.
He's just a Californian. You know how it is.
Yeah, he's just a California guy. You know what? No, I think Mr. Peanut Butter from BoJack Horseman, I think he is dead center. Because he has the intelligence of Brian, he has the upbeat nature of, like, Santa's Little Helper, and he's very, very just plain dog-like in other
He acts like a
facets.
dog more than often.
Yeah, in the Ladybird axis. So I think he's like a solid middle ground.
He's the center point.
Yeah, he's the axis. Cartoon dogs.
It's funny, you think of like cartoon dogs, and like when you're not on the spot, you could probably think of like a million of them. But now I'm like, God, what's the unholy marriage between Brian Griffin and Ladybird?
Yeah.
It's like
famous cartoon dogs.
It's like my brain goes to Marmaduke, but Marmaduke doesn't talk.
Yeah. Would it be Fry's dog from Futurama?
No, because that's just
No.
sad. Surprise dog is just sad.
It's Gromit. It's Gromit from Wallace and
God,
Gromit.
you're fucking right. It is Gromit. You're
God
absolutely
damn it.
right.
All right, I'll doodle up a fucking graph.
You're absolutely right that it's Gromit.
It's Gromit. He's not that silly.
But yeah,
very
he even
tired.
He even looks like Brian Griffin a little bit. God damn it.
A little bit, yeah.
Like,
And Courage the Cowardly Dog is an outlier, just way off into space.
we have established some extremely cursed knowledge today.
Yeah, oh god, we have. We got very far from King of the
I mean, that's what happens. It's what happens. We're tangentially still related. We're still talking about Ladybird.
Yeah. Ladybird is instrumental in the inclusion of cartoon dogs in America. I mean,
guess. there are major episodes about her. That's what I remember.
Yeah, I don't remember anything about her other than she's old.
She's old. She's old and she's tired. And but I remember a lot of episodes about her that are kind of like about that sort of thing. Of like, oh, let's get Ladybird doing something again, or let's see what she likes, or let's have her bite a repairman and make everyone think Hank is racist.
That's right. I'm a little disappointed that I searched famous cartoon dogs on Google and Ladybird isn't in any of these pictures.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't.
We're about to change that right here.
We are about to change that. Ladybird, justice for Ladybird right now.
We're about to remind America of its roots in Arlen, Texas, close to Houston, that there is a brown cartoon dog that represents us all. She is old, she is tired, and that's it. She's old, she's tired, and she might be a little bit racist.
It's a gender swap Scooby-Doo. Thanks for watching.
Thank you, everybody. Okay, so I looked it up. The average episode is about 22 minutes, yeah?
Yeah.
How many episodes do you think you can handle in a week? Because I'm not a good metric, because I have different from normal free time allotments.
I mean, I have pretty free time as well. I could probably figure out a little bit each day if we need to.
Do you want to handle like one episode a day for a week and meet back next week, or do you want to try for like two?
I mean, we could probably do like two a day, like two a week, but I don't think we should shotgun an entire season in a week. I think that would kill us and our motivation.
So I definitely want to start with the pilot. How do you feel about cramming like first 8 episodes?
That's fine. Wait, how many episodes? Let me see how many episodes there are in season 1 real quick.
Actually, seasons were different then.
Season 1 only has 12 episodes.
Oh, shit. You want to... Let's... You know what? All right, the original plan we talked about before we started recording was like 6. Why don't we just start with 6?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
First two episodes after this one that we talk will be about the first and second half of season 1.
Sounds good.
Sounds good. God, and they immediately jump up to 23 in season 2.
Sure do.
All right, so we'll do 6 episodes. We'll come back. We'll talk.
We'll see how we feel about it. See how
how
that pace felt.
Yeah. Shit, is there anything else we need to cover?
I don't think so. I feel like if we just keep talking, we're going to keep rambling about the same stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Because we really didn't have a plan on this one. We're just like, let's just talk about it and feel it out.
Did you know that they made a dog shit PC game?
You know what? I feel like I might have.
In the year 2000?
Is it like a point and click? Or like, what the fuck is it?
I'm not entirely sure. Maybe part of our required watching will be the no commentary long play on YouTube. A Kotaku article describes it as painfully boring.
Ah, boy. That's a good sign.
You can get a copy of it off of Amazon pre-used for like $99, and half of the comments say it's not worth it.
$99? What the fuck are they? No, absolutely not worth it.
Well, it was made in 2000, and I can't imagine it sold well because people didn't like it very much. So.
I bet you it's free $99 on archive.com right now.
You know what? It might be. That required reading. We'll check out the King of the Hill PC game from the year 2000.
You're gonna go stream it right now.
Oh, fuck, I could. Shit. We'll look into that for next time.
We have to see when it takes place for lore accuracy.
Yeah, you're right. We gotta make sure that we don't skip ahead a little bit and get spoiled. Then yeah, I guess that's it.
That's
Thank you again to the 2 people listening.
It's gonna be more than 2. It's gonna be at least 1, maybe 3.
I can't wait until we get the entire town of Arlington, Texas, which is a real town.
I was saying we're getting Arlington, not Arlen. Damn.
Yeah, it's honestly probably the closest town in Texas to Arlen by
Both in location and name.
Well, actually, Arlington is actually far farther north than I thought it was.
Well, shit.
Yeah. So maybe it's not related at all. It's just a funny name. Never mind. Wikipedia says
Joke
here,
abandoned.
The design of King of the Hill was based on Texas suburbs from the 1950s, such as Arlington.
Well, you know what? That makes sense.
You know what? Wikipedia has proven me right once again.
You know, Wikipedia, you're not so bad. I'm glad that we can use you now, unlike high school when your teachers would yell at you for even remotely sniffing in Wikipedia's direction.
Fuck, right? Oh my god. Did you know that the King of the Hill theme song is called what was it? Fucking Yahoos and Triangles?
I was saying, did you know? Because it sounded like you were struggling to find the name.
I clicked on it in Wikipedia, and like instead of bringing me to the song, it brought me to the soundtrack, where the song is not highlighted at all.
I got one for you. Do you know what band sang it without looking it up?
There's a problem with that. See, is that I already saw.
I can't believe you cheated and you saw it, and how dare you, honestly, disrupt the integrity of this podcast.
Actually, the theme music composer is listed as Refreshments. As the Refreshments.
Yes.
Did they do anything?
I mean, they were a band. I don't know anything about their other music.
They disbanded in 1998.
Oh my god, King of the Hill killed the Refreshments.
King of the Hill killed the Refreshments. It was like a year after.
They got their syndication money for the theme song, and they're like, fuck it, I'm out.
Yeah. Honestly.
You know what? If I was someone like Danny Elfman who wrote the Simpsons theme song and probably
Danny Elfman wrote The Simpsons?
Yes. Yeah.
Shit.
If I was getting residuals off of a show like The Simpsons, I would probably do the same and be like, you know what? I'm not doing another song. Fuck it. I'm just gonna I'm gonna stay at home, eat Cheetos, and play Call of Duty.
Yeah, that's fair. You'd live like Bill.
Hell yeah.
Right. I think that's as much as I can squeeze out.
That's enough riffing.
Yeah, we can go ahead and stop recording here, I imagine.
All right.
Click. I'm hitting record. I just hit record. Yeah.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be. Oh, you good?
Yeah, I'm gonna make sure it's. Yep, I'm recording.
Cool. We'll figure out an opening at some point. I'll do it in editing.
Well, we should also probably like. Have,
yeah.
Like say go at a certain point.
How about this? At the count of 3, clap your hands. Okay.
Okay.
1, 2, 3. Did you clap?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
It obviously didn't come through on Discord because reasons, because of noise canceling.
Oh right, yeah.
But
I got mine.
Yeah, on Audacity it came through just fine.
Sick. We have that then. Fuck. We got to do it again. Because I paused my Audacity recording to make sure that I could
God damn it.
hear it.
No worries.
All right. 1, 2, 3.
All right. I got it.
I can see that it's there, so we're good. Okay.
Mine's still definitely there.
Okay. Cool. All right. Well, here we are. We're figuring it out.
We are certainly here.
Yes.